I agreed to marry her in a room that still smelled like wet concrete and burnt paper, and by then I already knew two things. The district was starving again, and pride had become a luxury item. The clerk behind the iron glass partition slid the contract toward me without looking up. The paper was government stock, thick enough to cut skin, with the black thread of oath binding stitched through the margin. Marriage in the post-war district was not a promise. It was a legal fusion of debt lines, ration priority, and protection rights under masked unit enforcement. Love, if it showed up at all, came after signatures, and usually too late to matter. Her name was Saren Vale. 3 years earlier, and I had put a knife through her brother's shoulder in a sanctioned duel on the South platforms and broken the ranking match that would have moved House Vale into munitions control. He lived. The scar did not forgive. Neither did she. So when I looked up from the contract and saw Serene standing there in a dark, formal coat with silver thread at the cuffs, no escort, no family banner, no expression, I laughed once because the alternative was admitting I was afraid. "You?" I said. She rested one gloved hand on the counter. "You're late, Kale." It was a small thing, the way she said my name. Calm, flat, like she had already crossed out every other option and arrived at me by arithmetic. "I thought your house preferred clean alliances," I said, "not gutter salvage." "We prefer useful outcomes." The clerk cleared his throat. "If this is a hostile union, declare it now. Hostility clauses cost extra." Seren didn't look at him. "It's civil." I almost said no on instinct. Then I remembered the notice nailed to my door that morning. Rent seizure in 48 hours. A guild suspension pending repayment. Medical lien on my mother's treatment in the lower ward. I remembered my sister Leo pretending she had already eaten. I remembered the city's ration lamps dimming at noon because the core output had dropped again and no one in authority would admit it. The district ran on recorded power allotments and recorded identities. Lose either, and you were a ghost waiting to be processed. "What's the price?" I asked. "Publicly," Saren said. "A 1-year alliance under war recovery statutes, shared household, combined debt shielding, mutual defense." "And privately?" Her eyes shifted to the contract, then back to me. "You stop asking that question in front of clerks." That should have ended it. A sensible man would have walked. I signed. The oath thread drank one drop of blood from my thumb and went hot. Her signature followed. The thread flashed white, then sank into the paper like a vein closing. Yet the clerk stamped the seal and recited the penalties for breach, concealment, and violent sabotage. When he got to memory tampering, he glanced at Seren, then at me, then pretended he had not. That was the district in one gesture. Everyone knew where the real crimes lived, and everyone preferred paperwork. Outside, rain hissed off the rail lines and ran black through the gutter channels. The masked patrol at the corner didn't bother us. My new wife stood under the station awning, while I folded the contract into my coat like it might try to escape. "You look disappointed," she said. "I'm trying to decide whether you married me to insult me or to use me." She turned, letting the rain mist the edge of her hair. "Those aren't opposites." That was the first hour of my marriage. By nightfall, I learned she had bought my apartment building, not rented me a better room, not paid my arrears, bought the entire block, 3 floors of cracked walls, leaking pipes, and people the city preferred out of frame. Yet the ownership sigil over the entrance had changed from municipal gray to the Vale linework, a vertical crescent split by 3 measured cuts. Fresh paint, fresh guards, fresh lies. Old Rukin, who ran the boiler on level 1, looked at me as if I'd brought plague home with the groceries. "They came with documents," he muttered. "Transfer codes verified. Debt records consolidated. Half the streets under new management by morning." "Half?" He spat into the drain. "The half connected to you." That sentence sat in my chest like metal. Upstairs, Leo had fallen asleep at the table over a school slate and a bowl she had cleaned so well it reflected the lamp. She was 15, narrow as wire, all elbows and attention. She woke when the door clicked, reached for the knife under the cloth, then relaxed when she saw me. "You're bleeding," she said. "Contract cut." Her gaze dropped to the black thread seal burn on my thumb, and then to the folded document in my hand. "You did it." I nodded. With her. I nodded again. Leo leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Did we win, or did we lose in an expensive way? I should have lied. Instead, I sat across from her and said, "I don't know yet." She snorted softly. "Then it's bad." Before I could answer, 3 knocks landed on the door in perfect spacing. Not a neighbor, not a collector. Trained. I opened it to find a woman in Vale House gray, old enough to have served 2 generations, holding a lacquered case and a ledger slate. Her posture was so exact it looked painful. "House instructions," she said. "For Mrs. Vale's husband." "Cale." She didn't blink. "For Mrs. Vale's husband." She stepped past me without waiting and set the case on the table between me and Leo. Inside was a key ring, a ration ledger, 2 transit passes with upgraded clearance, a med card stamped priority bronze, and a sealed letter pressed with a sigil I had not seen since childhood. A split circle marked through with the old district registry line. Only certain bloodlines could open registry seals without tripping an alert. Mine was one of them. My father used to handle municipal archive recoveries before he disappeared in the riot years. I had not spoken that aloud in more than a decade. Leo saw the sigil and went still. "Why does she have that?" The housewoman slid the ledger toward me. "By order of Mrs. Vale, all prior debt instruments, rental agreements, guild penalties, educational fees, medical liens, and civil restrictions associated with your name and household have been purchased, transferred, or stayed under private authority." I looked at her, then at the ledger, then back at her. "Say that again." She did, with the same neutral tone. Leo leaned over before I could stop her and read the first page. Her face changed in stages: confusion, disbelief, anger. "This is everything." Yes. Not just the rent, not just my guild debt, my old dual fines. My probation fees from the South Platform incident, my mother's treatment balance, Leo's school registration arrears, utility penalties, transit infractions, a bounty notice suspension I didn't know still existed from a job gone wrong in the rail tunnels, even a food credit overdraw from winter rationing. Every bad decision I had ever survived was listed, indexed, and reassigned. The housewoman tapped the sealed letter. "Mrs. Vale requests that you read this alone. I'm done taking requests. Then consider it an early test of your marriage." She left before I could throw her out. Leo waited until the stairwell echoes died. "Don't open it here." "You think it's trapped?" "I think she knows our walls are thin." I took the letter to the roof. The rain had thinned to a cold mist, and the district spread below in layers of wet light and broken neon. Masked unit drones moved between towers on silent tracks, scanning sigils, scanning heat, scanning debt tags. In the distance, yet the central siren tower pulsed amber twice, the warning code for power ration compression. The city was choking and calling it maintenance. The seal opened under my thumb. Inside was one sheet, handwritten, no perfume, no flourish. "Cale, you asked the wrong question at the registry. The price is not your obedience. If I wanted that, I would have bought a guard. I need your name, your access, and your memory of places people like me were never allowed to enter. In exchange, your household survives the winter. Do not show this letter to anyone, not even your sister. Tomorrow, 5:40, East Archive Transit Gate 3. Come armed, come alone. If you bring a tale, I will leave you to the unit. S." I read it twice, then held it over the roof vent until the paper curled black and blew apart. By dawn, I had made 3 decisions and trusted none of them. I left Leo sleeping with the upgraded med card on the table where she would see it and hate me less for an hour. I took my short blade, at a coil of thread steel, and the pulse tag I used to bluff my way through lower rank scans. And I went to Transit Gate 3 knowing that "come alone" is what people say when they expect trouble and want to control where it happens. The East Archive lines ran under the old municipal quarter, a part of the district most people never saw because there was no reason to go unless you worked records, enforcement, or burial transfer. The platforms were clean in the way abandoned hospitals are clean. Scrubbed surfaces, no voices, too much echo. Saren stood under the gate clock wearing field clothes, not house gray. No insignia, no jewelry, hair tied back. At her feet sat a metal case with impact dents and a chain around the handle. "You're 2 minutes early," she said. "You said armed." Her eyes flicked to my hip. "Good. I need useful, not brave. You bought my life. I stabilized your liabilities. You indexed my sister. I protected her school status." The station lights flickered once. Somewhere overhead, a relay groaned. I stepped closer. "Don't dress this up. You put your name on everything I can lose." She met my stare without flinching. "Yes." There was no apology in it, no cruelty either, just fact. That unsettled me more. She lifted the case and passed it to me. It was heavier than it looked. "Carry this. If anyone scans us, you're the courier." "What's in it?" "A reason your district keeps having maintenance blackouts." I almost laughed again, but the sound died when a platform chime sounded and the arrival board flashed a route that should not have been active. Archive trains had been suspended for civilian use after the war. The display read "Manual Override //A Youth 7. Saren saw me reading it. "This is the part where you decide whether you married an enemy or joined a crime." "What's the difference?" "In this city, branding." The train that arrived had no route paint and no passengers. Just one conductor drone mounted behind armored glass and a scan arch that hummed with old sigil tech, the kind that checked lineage permissions and oath contamination. Those systems were supposed to be sealed after the purge statutes. Saren did not slow. "Let me talk." The scan arch lit as we passed. Pale lines climbed my skin where old oath marks had scarred over. My dual seal, my guild bond, my marriage thread, and underneath them a registry pattern I had not triggered since I was a child standing beside my father in archive halls I barely remembered. The machine chimed once, then displayed access class, decommissioned status, invalid/accepted, note, Kest relation flag. My stomach dropped. Saren's expression changed for the first time since the registry. Not surprise. Confirmation. She boarded. "So it's real." Gifted I stayed on the platform, case in hand, pulse hammering in my throat. "What did you just use me for?" The doors began to close. She caught one with her palm, hard enough to trip the safety latch. "I used your bloodline to open a door the city claims no longer exists. If you want to scream, do it inside. We're on a timer." I got on because I was angry, and anger has carried me into worse traps than fear ever did. The train dropped below district level in silence. No announcements, no route lights, just the occasional flash of old maintenance sigils on the tunnel walls, many of them scored out and rewritten by newer authority marks. Saren watched the dark like she was counting turns. I watched her reflection in the glass and tried to remember all the stories I'd heard about House Vale. Most were about procurement, weapons contracts, and clean-handed violence. None included dawn rides with illegal archive trains. "You knew my father's line," I said. "I suspected." From what?" She looked at the case between my boots. "Guild logs." That got my attention. "My guild records are sealed." She gave me a thin glance. "Most seals are for honest people." She unlatched a pocket on her coat and took out a folded copy slate print, worn at the corners. Academy formatting. Old. She held it just long enough for me to read the header. District Combat Academy / Disciplinary Transfer Log. Entry error, C, Kest. Status, registered / unregistered. Below that, lines of redacted text and one note in system script. Name never issued, removed from ranking index. I stared at it. "Where did you get that?" "Basement records under Hall 4. Hidden behind munitions inventory from the Civil Reconstruction years." "Why were you digging through Academy basement records?" "Because my brother was supposed to lose that duel to you by 12 points, she said. and there it was. Something sharp in her voice at last. Not 31. He said you moved like someone who had already seen the pattern. I thought he was making excuses. Then your file vanished, and every system that mentioned your training began contradicting itself. The train slowed. You married me over a ranking discrepancy? I said. I married you because the district is failing in a pattern that matches buried records, and every path into those records terminates at names tied to archive access, decommissioned lines, and your family. She took the print back and folded it once. The discrepancy just made me look twice. The doors opened onto a platform with no signage. Cold air rolled in carrying dust, old machine oil, and the mineral smell of flooded concrete. Emergency strips glowed low along the floor. Beyond the platform arch sat a corridor of sealed gates, each marked with obsolete city departments, census, utilities, structural memory, civil corrections. Structural memory. I hated the sound of it immediately. Saren stepped out and nodded toward the far gate. Keep moving. Drones rotate every 6 minutes, but old systems ghost scan in between. Ghost scan? Automated sweeps no one admits still run. They report to whoever inherited the back end. That's not an explanation. It's the only one I have. We moved through the corridor fast, our footsteps too loud in the emptiness. At the structural memory gate, Saren produced a strip key, inserted it, and got a red denial light. She looked at me. No, I said. Kale. You keep saying we like we're already a team. We are married under oath law and standing in an illegal transit branch with evidence in your hands. This is not the moment to develop standards. I swore, stepped forward, and pressed my thumb to the dead scanner. Nothing happened. Then slowly, lines lit under the dust like veins waking under skin. A mechanical voice crackled from somewhere inside the wall, degraded by age. Registry Branch 9. Relation access. Kest line partial. Memory vault permissions revoked. Override pending. The lock clunked once and opened 2 centimeters. The corridor lights cut out. For half a second, the only illumination came from the red line of the scanner under my hand and the faint blue pulse leaking from seams in the case at my feet. Then alarms hit. Not local station alarms. Citywide transmission alarms. The kind that hijacked public speakers and private slates at once. A woman's voice, official, calm, rehearsed, filled the dark. Broadcast advisory. Unauthorized relic fluctuation detected in East Grid under maintenance blackout conditions. Residents are instructed to remain indoors. Masked unit response is active. Any individual in transit zones without ranking clearance will be treated as contaminant support. Contaminant support. Saren cursed under her breath. They're faster than last time. Last time. She grabbed my sleeve and pulled me through the half-open gate as metal clanged somewhere behind us. Move! The room beyond was not a vault. It was a chamber wrapped around a machine the size of a house, all copper ribs and glass conduits, with suspended rings turning around a central core of dark liquid light. Sigils crawled over the containment walls in repeating chains. Some were city script, some were old house marks, some I did not know at all. The air prickled against my teeth. I had fought curse bearers in tunnel pits and watched relics crack men apart from the inside. This felt worse because it was organized. On the far wall, behind a curtain of cables, a cracked monitor flickered to life as if our entry had fed it power. Text scrolled in blocks, glitching between time formats and route tags. Grid stabilization event / archive shunt. Civil memory reassignment district poverty zone. Compliance. Update. Authorized purchase stream active. My hands tightened on the case handle. What is this? Saren was already at a side console, slamming a manual key into a rusted slot. I don't know the full architecture. I know house procurement funds have been feeding sealed infrastructure for years, and every time the district riots, debt ownership patterns shift through shell contracts within hours. She looked back at me, face pale in the machine glow. I think someone has been buying people before they know they've been sold. I wanted to call that impossible. Then I remembered the ledger on my table. Each line of my life transferred cleanly under a new authority seal overnight. A metallic click sounded from the corridor behind us. Boots, multiple, measured, masked unit. Saren's eyes cut to the case. Open it. You said not here. That was before the unit arrived. The chain around the handle came free with a sigil pulse. Inside, nested in shock foam, lay a broken relic shard shaped like a crescent lens, black at the edges and silver through the center. Hairline cracks ran across its surface, and inside those cracks light moved like trapped rain. The moment I touched it, the chamber temperature dropped. The relic hummed once, low and almost human, and the nearest wall sigils flared. Saren stared. It reacts to you. From the corridor, a voice amplified through a mask called out, "By order of District Recovery Enforcement, remain visible and place all relic materials on the floor. You are in violation of containment law." Another voice, quieter, maybe the squad lead speaking aside, said something that froze my blood. "Confirm visual, Kest relation flag present." They knew my name, not just the guilds, not just Saren with her basement logs. Masked unit. Saren came to my side, blade in hand now, no hesitation left in her. "Listen to me. If they take you, they won't process you through normal detention." "How do you know?" Her jaw flexed once. "Because I've seen the transfer orders." The relic shard pulsed again, and for one violent instant a scene flashed across its cracked surface. Not a reflection, not imagination. A platform drowned in smoke. A younger version of me on one knee, bleeding from the mouth. A masked figure reaching for my throat. A woman's hand dragging me backward by the collar. The image tore before I could see her face. A broken relic that replayed a scene when fed emotion. Fear, maybe. Rage. Mine was giving it both. I looked at Saren, she looked at me. In the corridor, the unit began cutting through the gate. "Kale," she said, very steady now. "I did buy your debts. I bought your building. I bought your access routes, your penalties, your silence if I had to. I bought every legal thread attached to your life because it was the only way to get ahead of them." The cutting torch screamed through metal. She stepped closer, voice dropping under the alarm wash. "And if you still think I did it to own you, survive the next 5 minutes and ask me again." The gate hinge burst. The first shadow of a masked rifle entered the chamber, and the relic in my hand lit like it recognized the shape. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as a bad marriage and started understanding it as something older, buried deeper, and already in motion long before I signed my name. The relic shard flared so hard it turned the chamber walls white, and for a second every moving part in that machine froze in clean silhouette. The turning rings, the cable curtains, the cut hinge of the gate, the rifle barrel adio entering through smoke. Then the light collapsed inward and hit my hand like a pulse through bone. My fingers locked around the shard. I smelled iron and rain and old train grease, and suddenly I was seeing 2 rooms at once. The chamber in front of me, and another angle layered over it, offset by a breath, as if the world had been copied badly and the copies were slipping. "Down!" Saren shouted. I moved late. A shot cracked over my shoulder and blew a channel through the console behind us. Glass burst across my neck. Saren slammed into me hard enough to knock me sideways behind the machine housing. More shots followed, controlled, not panic fire. Masked unit. They always shot to disable first when they needed something alive. The relic went hot, then cold, then hot again in my palm. "Can you stand?" she asked. "Yes." "You're bleeding." "So are you." A red line had opened along her forearm where shrapnel caught her sleeve. She looked at it once, tore the fabric tighter with her teeth, and ignored it. The unit commander's amplified voice came through the chamber, calm as a clerk. "Kale Kest, Saren Vale. This containment breach is now under District Seizure Authority. Place the relic on the floor and move away from the stabilization engine. You will be held pending memory review." Memory review. The words hit harder than the gunfire. Saren leaned close enough that I could hear her over the alarms without looking at her. If they say memory review, it means black site transfer. You said normal detention was off the table. You forgot the reassuring part. Ew, there isn't one. Something slammed against the far side of our cover. Magnetic clamp. They were anchoring a shield line to push the room. I risked a glance through a gap in the machine ribs. 3 unit operatives in full masks, 1 shield carrier, 1 cutter repositioning at the blown hinge, 1 overwatch near the threshold. More shadows behind them. Professional spacing. No wasted movement. One of them held a scan wand pointed directly at my position. The tip lit blue. Kest relation marker stable, the overwatch said. Relic resonance is keyed. We need his hands intact. Good to know, I muttered. Saren heard me. Give me the shard. No. She snapped her head toward me. I can run interference. And if it's keyed to me, then you'll keep it and die slower. A laugh slipped out of me, sharp and ugly. There's the honeymoon tone. The next shot punched through the machine plating and showered us with sparks. We both flinched. The machine answered with a deep harmonic groan, and one of the rotating rings sped up half a turn before correcting. On the cracked monitor across the room, system text stuttered and rewrote itself. Stabilization error, unauthorized input / relation access. Safe system failover, fail. A city system failing in real time. The safe architecture everyone trusted. The ranking scans, the debt ledgers, the patrol routes, the polite announcements. It all sat on top of this buried thing, and right now it was choking. Saren saw the monitor too. They can't risk the engine recording this. They'll flood the room. With what? Sealant gas, maybe fire suppressant if they want the relic intact. Either way, it'll blind us. I gripped the shard tighter. Then what's the move? She looked toward a grated maintenance shaft, half hidden behind cable curtains on the left wall, 30 meters away and in clear view of the unit angle. There. If the old maps were right, it connects to a service line beneath civil corrections. You said ghost scans run these tunnels. I said they report. I didn't say they think. The commander spoke again, closer now. Final notice. Comply and preserve your legal standing. Saren's expression went flat. He says that to everyone before he deletes the paperwork. Then she moved. She rose from cover and threw a compact sigil puck across the chamber floor. It hit, skidded, and burst into a lattice of false heat signatures. 6 bodies sprinting in different directions, each tagged with panic-level pulse readouts. Unit rifles split fire instantly. Good soldiers, wrong targets. Now, she yelled. We ran low behind the machine's outer ribs. The shard in my hand kept pulsing, and every pulse gave me a fraction of warning. Where a rifle would track, where a boot would land, where a line of sight would open. Not prophecy, not certainty. More like memory trying to happen a second too early. Ia round-clipped the great frame as Saren reached it. She jammed her blade into the rusted latch and kicked. It didn't move. Again! I hit it shoulder first. Relic jammed to my chest. Metal screamed. Another pulse slammed through me. Flash of the same grate open. Flash of Saren dropping first. Flash of my own hand slipping on blood. I adjusted without thinking. Grabbed lower and tore the latch sideways instead of down. The grate came loose. Saren stared at me for half a beat. You've done this before. Not this. Something like it. Good enough. She dropped into the shaft feet first. I followed, pulling the grate closed as shots hit the opening. Darkness swallowed us except for the relic glow and the thin red maintenance strips every few meters down the chute. We slid, bounced, hit an elbow turn, and spilled into a narrow tunnel flooded ankle-deep with cold water. Behind us, muffled through metal, the unit commander barked orders. Track the resonance. Is seal lower sectors. Notify upper procurement that Vale is confirmed complicit. Upper procurement. Saren heard that too. Her jaw tightened. Move. We ran bent over through the tunnel while old pipes sweated overhead, and the water threw our footsteps back at us. The relic light painted the walls in broken crescents. Every 20 meters, faded stencil marks appeared through grime. Memory root / authorized transfer only. Some had been scraped away. Some had fresh paint over old letters, the kind of patchwork bureaucrats use when they don't want to admit a corridor still matters. I wanted answers. I wanted to stop and drag them out of her one by one. Instead, I kept pace and tried not to slip. At the next junction, a ceiling drone flicked on. Small, spherical, ancient. Its scan beam swept across us and paused on my face. For a horrible second, I expected an alarm. Instead, it chimed in a childlike civic tone that made my skin crawl. Transfer path validated. 1 active, 1 shadowed. Proceed to reassignment. Then it powered down. Saren stopped dead. 1 active, 1 shadowed. You tell me. That system shouldn't be able to see oath concealment layers. She looked at me as if I had changed shape mid-run. What did the shard do to you? I'm still me. That wasn't the question. A siren pulse shuddered through the tunnel, distant but closing. We kept moving. The service line ended at a rusted hatch leading into a decommissioned intake room under civil corrections, just as she'd said. Decommissioned in our district usually meant still in use, just deniable. The room held old restraint chairs bolted to the floor, cabinets with the doors ripped off, and a wall of filing slots melted into slag. New cables had been run across the ceiling recently, black insulation still clean. On the far table sat a portable relay terminal, screen on, unattended. Saren reached it first. They left in a hurry. Or they want us to look. Yeah, everything wants us to look. Her fingers moved fast over the terminal keys. She didn't type like a noble house procurement heir. She typed like someone who had broken into systems before and learned where the traps lived. I kept watch at the door with my knife in one hand and the relic in the other, every nerve ringing. The terminal unlocked with a tone. Got it, she said, and then her face changed. What? She turned the screen toward me. It was a transfer ledger. Not debts this time. People. Columns of names, district tags, ranking classes, compliance scores. Some marked ASH rehoused. Some marked archive cleared. Some marked memory revised. Entire blocks of lower ward residents processed after each maintenance blackout, each civil disturbance, each ration compression. There were timestamps, route codes, purchase authorizations. And in the authorizing column, nested beneath shell identifiers and municipal fronts. One recurring notation appeared often enough to feel like a signature. UP-PROC/VALESTREAM/B9. I felt my stomach turn. Your house. Saren looked like she wanted to smash the terminal with her bare hands. A stream, not a house order. Procurement channels get partitioned. Still your name? Yes. I scanned down the list and stopped when I saw a tag I knew. Mara Kest, was lower ward medical hold. Status transfer pending, deferred. Reason, relation, key retention my mother. Deferred not because of mercy, deferred because of me. The room seemed to narrow. They held her for leverage. Saren swallowed once. Kale, don't. I stepped away from the table before I did something stupid. The relic pulsed again, weaker this time, and a vision flashed across the cracked surface. A woman on a hospital bed behind a privacy curtain, hand restraints hidden under blankets, a masked orderly signing a transfer slate, a bronze med card placed on the table and then removed. The image cut out. My voice came out thin. It shows pieces. Saren stared at the shard. Fed emotion, it replays tied events. The notes on the relic were right. You had notes? A broken catalog entry and half a field report. That's it. I wanted to hate her. It would have been clean. Instead, I had a terminal full of proof, and my mother's name sitting in the middle of it like a knife. A noise in the corridor stopped both of us. Not boots this time. bare feet splashing through the tunnel water. Fast, uneven. I raised the knife. A figure stumbled through the hatch and froze when he saw us. A man in correction gray with one sleeve torn off, maybe 30, maybe 50 under the grime. Restraint burns on both wrists, pupils blown wide. He looked at the relic first, then at me, then at Seren, and started laughing the way people do when they're about to break in half. "They sent the married pair," he said. "Of course they did." Yeah, Seren stepped between him and the terminal. "Who are you?" "Darren Holt." He tapped the side of his neck where an old compliance chip scar sat. "Records technician." She straightened and glared at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "Following the upgraded transit pass, my new sister-in-law left under your coat seam. It pinged an unauthorized route and then went dark." "You think I wouldn't check?" Seren closed her eyes once, brief and furious at herself. "I told you not to involve—" Leo cut her off. "You involved me when you bought my school debt." Holt stared between us. "This is the younger sibling stake. Great, perfect. We're doing prophecy structure now." "Shut up!" all three of us said at once. Leo dumped the drone shell on the table and snapped open the casing. Inside was a support rig I recognized in pieces: signal booster, improvised relay teeth, stolen battery cores, and a tiny lens array from one of the roofline survey drones. She looked at me and then at the relic. "It's emitting pulse-coded data on a broken civic channel. I can piggyback it if we reach a stronger line." Seren blinked. "Those are technician-grade modifications. What the city can legally do to a person after a blackout." He smiled at my face like he hated seeing me understand. "If you control the layer, you don't need tanks. You just change the paperwork and let hunger do the rest." Serene asked, "Who is B9 now?" "Not who. Protocol cluster, upper procurement fronts, masked enforcement liaisons, archive residuals." He looked at her coat, at the stitching where a veil seam had been cut out. "And whichever houses sold infrastructure access for stability." Seren didn't flinch, but I saw her hand tighten around the blade. I asked the second question because my throat was already closing around it. "Why Kest relation key?" Holt's face lost its frantic humor. "Your father was an archive engineer on the rollback team. There was supposed to be a one-time purge after the civil settlements. Retire the temporary memory routing systems. Restore ordinary registry authority. He found evidence the emergency protocols were being made permanent. He refused final sign-off." Holt paused. "Then he disappeared from every approved record within 48 hours. I heard myself say, 'He abandoned us.'" Holt looked at me with exhausted pity. "Maybe. Or maybe that's the version the layer kept because it was useful." Seren stepped in before I could decide whether to hit Holt or drag him closer. "What does the relic have to do with the engine?" "It's not just a relic. It's a witness shard from an audit ring. Branch 9 used them during stabilization events to verify memory route integrity. They record emotional spikes tied to system violence, raids, transfers, forced revisions. Too much corruption and the shard starts pulling toward unresolved truth." His eyes dropped to my hand. "That one should have been destroyed." "Why does it answer to me?" I asked. "Well, because relation keys were built around bloodline privilege and oath geometry. Your line had emergency override rights before the rollback failed. If the shard still recognizes Kest signatures, it sees you as a valid witness." The tunnel siren pulse sounded again, closer, followed by the distant metallic slam of hatches sealing. Holt jerked his head toward the terminal. "They're closing sectors. You're out of time." Seren looked at the screen, then at him. "Can we expose this?" He barked a humorless laugh. "Expose it to who? The same city that uses it? Public proof only matters if you can force a live contradiction." He pointed at the relic. "Shard feed plus engine output plus visible enforcement response. One event they can't redact fast enough." My mind snagged on that. Public reveal through a single undeniable event. Not a story, a collision. "How?" I asked. Holt reached into his torn shirt and pulled out a folded strip of polymer, slick with sweat. He handed it to me. And a map, partial and old, with missing corridors hand-annotated in red. At the edge was a route labeled Storm Duct Access / Civic Broadcast Spine. A maintenance street that doesn't exist on current maps, he said. Appears when the floodgates cycle under heavy rain. Leads to the Central Siren Tower's emergency broadcast line. Branch 9 used it to push district-wide advisories during unrest, before they moved those functions topside. He looked at the ceiling again, listening. If you can feed engine output and shard replay into that line while unit is actively trying to suppress you, the whole district sees the contradiction. Saren took a sharp breath. That route was scrubbed. I archived the scrub. The hatch behind him clanged. Not unit discipline this time, heavy, forced, like someone hit it with a baton. Holt's eyes widened. That's not them. The hatch burst inward and a girl ducked through, breathing hard, hair soaked. And a compact drone shell strapped to her back with wire. Leo. For half a second I couldn't process it. Then all my fear turned into anger so fast it made me dizzy. What are you doing here? Leo shrugged, trying and failing to look casual. School robotics elective. Also Rook and Horde's parts. I felt 10 different things at once and had no room for any of them. You should not be here. I know, she said quietly, and for the first time she sounded 15. Then she set her jaw. But I am. The corridor lights outside flickered from red to white. Holt went pale. Sector purge sweep. They're escalating. Through the hatch came the hiss of pressurized gas venting somewhere nearby. Saren moved first, crisp and decisive again. We take the storm duct route to the broadcast spine. Holt, can you walk? He gave her a look. I can collapse in whichever direction you need. She pointed at Leo's rig. Carry the booster. Keep it dry. If I say drop, you drop. Then she turned to me. Kale, relic, and map. If the shard is pulling toward unresolved truth, it may react near hidden junctions. Trust the pulses. You're giving orders like this is your operation. It stopped being mine when your sister arrived with a broadcast hack. That almost earned a smile. Almost. We moved. Holt led for the first stretch because he knew which sealed doors were fake seals and which were real containment. Twice we passed through side corridors where old filing walls had been converted into transfer bays. Once we saw body straps hanging from a rail and did not stop. The gas hiss followed us, thin and bitter. Behind that, the unit spread through the lower sectors methodically, not rushing, herding. At a flooded junction, the map showed a dead wall. Holt slapped the concrete with his palm and said, "Wait for the cycle." Nothing. Then the shard pulsed in my hand. 3 quick beats, 1 long, and a seam appeared under the runoff. A narrow service door hidden by paint and false stone. Leo looked at me, eyes wide despite herself. "It's finding it," she whispered. "No," I said, feeling the pulse climb my wrist. "I think it remembers it." The storm duct beyond was barely shoulder-wide and loud with runoff. Rainwater from half the district hammered through overhead grates, turning the floor into a fast black stream. We moved single file, 1 hand on the wall, 1 on whoever was in front when the current surged. Twice Leo nearly lost her footing, and both times Saren caught her without looking back. The second time, Leo muttered a breathless, "Thanks," like she hated needing to. Holt kept talking between coughs, maybe to stay conscious. Branch 9 started as emergency continuity. War knocks out records, people starve, militias rewrite ownership, city tears itself apart. So they built a layer to preserve identity and distribution until systems stabilized. It worked. Then the people running it realized temporary control scales nicely. Who signed the expansion? She, Saren asked. Depends how honest your answer needs to be. Officially, no one. Unofficially, everyone who profited from predictable suffering. That includes Vale, I said. Yes. She didn't argue. At the next split, a speaker grill crackled overhead, and the unit commander's voice rolled through the duct, amplified by old maintenance lines. Kale Kest, Saren Vale, you are approaching restricted flood infrastructure. Continued movement will trigger lethal containment. The child is not flagged. Release her and legal leniency remains possible. Leo barked a laugh that sounded too much like mine. That's a lie. The commander continued as if she hadn't spoken. Saren Vale, Upper Procurement has authorized private amnesty under family compliance if you return the relation key and witness shard immediately. Saren's face went still in a way that frightened me more than panic would have. She didn't slow. I said, private amnesty. She kept her eyes on the duct ahead. I heard. Is that why you married me? To bargain me up if this failed? She stopped so abruptly Holt nearly ran into her. Water slammed around our boots. Leo looked between us, tense. Saren turned in the narrow duct, rainwater running off her hair and jaw. And for the first time since I met her, she looked openly angry. Not controlled angry, not strategic angry, wounded. If I wanted amnesty, Kale, I would have handed your name to them before sunrise and watched my family call it loyalty. Her voice was low and shaking at the edges from exertion and fury. I married you because every route into Branch 9 was sealed unless I carried a legal relation key, and because by the time I confirmed what procurement was doing under our stream, your household was already marked. I bought your debts because that was the only language the system couldn't ignore quickly enough. She stepped closer in the rushing dark. I don't need you to trust me. I need you to decide whether we keep moving before the duct locks. The shard pulsed hard between us, lighting both our hands. A vision flashed across the crack. Saren at my apartment table the previous night, alone with the ledger open, touching my mother's entry with 2 fingers, and whispering something I couldn't hear before sealing the bronze med card under Leo's cup. Not staged. Not for me. No witnesses. The image vanished. I swallowed rain and whatever else was in my throat. Keep moving. We reached the broadcast spine access chamber with seconds to spare before the first floodgate cycle slammed shut behind us. The room was circular, ribbed with old Civic transmitter coils and newer armored cabling spliced in by someone with money and no respect for standards. A vertical conduit rose through the ceiling toward the central siren tower. At its base sat a control altar of cracked screens and physical switchbanks, half dead, half waiting. And standing in front of it, dry under an umbrella carried by a masked attendant, was a man in a clean slate coat with no insignia. No mask. No weapon visible. Mid-50s, careful hair, polite posture. Antagonists in stories are usually loud. Real ones look like accountants at a memorial. He nodded at Saren first. You made it farther than expected. She went rigid. Director Halvek. Holt made a strangled sound. Upper Procurement. Halvek smiled faintly. Formerly. Titles move. Functions remain. His eyes came to me, then to the shard, and there was something like satisfaction there. Kale Kest. Your father was difficult in exactly the same way. I took one step forward before Saren's arm barred my chest. Halvek continued, almost kindly. This can still end without spectacle. Return the shard. Step away from the spine. I will process the child and the technician as incidental contamination and clear them after review. Leo whispered. He said process like we're boxes. Yes, I said. Yeah, Halvek tilted his head at her. Your sister is perceptive. Not my sister, Saren said, knife low at her side. Don't talk to her. He ignored the blade. Saren, your family has already offered terms. They understand necessity. You do too, or you would not have purchased the Kest liabilities. You wanted leverage. Sensible. Let's not confuse leverage with principle. Something in Saren's expression settled then. Not rage, not doubt. Choice. She handed me her strip key. It took me a second to understand what she was doing. Kale, she said without looking at me. The right side switchbank controls legacy emergency broadcast. The key slot under the cracked screen will accept this if the shard is active. Leo, when I say, patch your booster to the lower relay teeth. It won't hold long. Holt, feed the transfer ledger and engine tags to any open civic channel. Holt stared. There are 4 armed attendants. Then type quickly. Halvek's smile finally thinned. Saren. She looked at him, calm now in the worst possible way. You offered amnesty. That means you're afraid of a public contradiction. One attendant moved. Saren moved first. I'd seen duelists, guild enforcers, tunnel killers, and one academy champion when I was young enough to think skill looked beautiful. Saren fought like someone trained for rooms, not arenas. Short lines, no waste, all intent. Her blade caught the first attendant's wrist before his baton cleared the coat. She pivoted under the second, drove an elbow into his throat, and kicked the umbrella stand into Halvek's knees, breaking his stance and his composure in the same motion. The chamber erupted. Now! She shouted. Leo was already moving, splashing to the relay bank with the booster rig. Holt threw himself at the control altar and started keying commands with both hands, muttering root strings through split lips. I hit the switch bank with Saren's key in one hand and the relic shard in the other. I found the cracked slot by touch and jammed them together. For 1 dead second, nothing happened. Then the shard pulsed like a heart restarting. Screens flared across the chamber. The vertical conduit screamed awake. Somewhere far above us, the central siren tower changed tone. On the nearest monitor, a Civic broadcast frame snapped live and began filling with data. Engine output hashes, transfer ledgers, route logs, names, timestamps. Leo's booster shrieked under the load. Holt slammed a final command and yelled, "Shard, feed me the replay!" I didn't know how to do that. I just looked at Halvek struggling to stand while Saren held off 2 attendants, and a third reached for a sidearm, and the emotion hit all at once. Fear, fury, grief, the sick understanding of my mother's deferred transfer, my father's erased name, my whole block bought like inventory. The shard answered. Its cracked face blazed, and images flooded the screen in broken sequence but undeniable detail. Masked transfers from hospital wards, Branch 9 routing tags overlaying blackout advisories, enforcement squads escorting reassignment lines through the same tunnels. A hand, Halvek's younger, signing a procurement authorization beside Veilstream/B9. My father in archive gray arguing at a console while a red stamp marked his access revoked. A child version of me in a hallway I didn't remember looking back as someone dragged me away. The chamber speakers and the city's siren network carried all of it. No narration, no framing, just the data and the images, raw and synchronized. Halvek shouted something at his attendants I couldn't hear over the broadcast tone. Then the tower answered from above. Not with sound, but with every district speaker waking at once. Across the city, people would be seeing their own advisories interrupted by names they knew, streets they lived on, blackouts they endured explained in a language even hunger could read. Purchase, transfer, revise. Public reveal. One undeniable event. The cost came immediately. The shard in my hand cracked deeper with a sound like ice in a river. Pain shot up my arm into my jaw. The relay conduit overloaded and spat blue fire. Leo's booster rig blew a battery core and threw her backward. I lunged, caught her shoulder, and nearly dropped the shard. "Cut it!" Holt screamed. "The spine's feeding back into the engine." Saren saw it too. She had Halvek's sidearm now, but one attendant had gotten behind her and driven a shock blade into her shoulder. She fired twice one-handed, dropping the man, and then looked straight at me through the sparks and shouted, "Kale, shut the line or it takes the whole tower." If the tower blew, the district's emergency network would go dark for weeks. Hospitals, flood alerts, ration sirens, everything. A lot of innocent people would pay for one perfect proof. Moral choices never arrive clean. They arrive while someone you care about is bleeding and a machine is screaming. I reached for the kill switch. Halvek, on one knee, looked up at me through blood and rainwater and said, almost conversationally, "If you cut it now, the archive will survive. We can rebuild the layer. Your proof becomes an outage rumor by morning." He wasn't begging. He was offering me the shape of the next cage. The shard pulsed again, weak and jagged, and showed me one more image. Leo at the apartment table, older by years I had not lived yet, sorting ration cards in a city still running on someone else's ledger. I did not hit the kill switch. I hit the manual reroute. Siren's strip key snapped in the slot as I forced the lever left. The broadcast spine dumped excess load away from the tower and back down line into Branch 9's sealed relay cluster. The chamber lights went black. Somewhere beneath us, deep under structural memory, something immense failed all at once. The floor dropped half an inch and stopped. Every screen in the room flashed white and died. Silence hit so hard my ears rang. Then, far above, the city sirens resumed on backup power, ragged, uneven, but alive. Holt started laughing and crying at the same time. "You burned the layer. You actually burned Branch 9. "Not all of it," Halvek said from the dark. He sounded winded, shocked, and still maddeningly composed. "Enough to hurt. Not enough to end." A shot cracked. Not Saren's, not his attendants. They were down. Leo lowered the compact signal launcher she'd brought in the drone shell, smoke curling from the muzzle. She had aimed at the conduit clamp above Halvek, not at him. The broken metal dropped. It pinned his coat to the flooded floor and showered him with sparks. His umbrella man dragged him back by the collar, and for the first time, Halvek looked afraid. "Go," Saren said, voice rough now. I got Leo under one arm and hauled Holt with the other, while Saren covered the chamber. We ran through a side maintenance hatch as backup alarms began to cascade through the spine. Behind us, Halvek was shouting orders again, already rebuilding his control through men and systems in fear. Some enemies don't die in season finales. They issue new directives. We surfaced just before dawn in a service alley 3 blocks from the central tower. Soaked, shaking, half burned by relay flash and sewer cold. The district was awake in the wrong way. Windows open, people in doorways, arguments in the street, public screens flickering between apology notices and corrupted ledger fragments. A woman across the lane was holding a slate with both hands and repeating a name to herself like she had just found the dead. Massed unit patrols were everywhere, but their formations were breaking under crowd pressure and comms failures. The city had seen enough to stop pretending nothing was there. Leo leaned against the wall, pale but upright. "Did we win?" Holt, somehow still standing, gave a wet laugh. "Kid, if you can still ask that question after a night like this, you're smarter than all of us." Saren pressed a hand over her shoulder wound and looked toward the tower, jaw set. "No tidy answers. They'll lock down districts. They'll call it a sabotage attack. They'll bury what they can." "But they can't unshow it," I said. She looked at me then, and there was no distance left in her face, only exhaustion and something more dangerous. Trust, maybe, or the beginning of it. "No," she said, "they can't." The relic shard in my hand had gone dim. New cracks webbed through the center, and pieces of memory around the edges felt thinner. And I searched for the exact sound of my father's voice, and found only the shape of him at a console, arguing in silence. Price with power. Not death. Not yet. Something quieter. Leo saw my expression. What did it cost? I looked at the dead shard, at the city starting to convulse around us, at Saren standing in blood and rain in a marriage coat turned field gray, at Holt already scanning the streets like a man deciding whether to run or testify. "Enough," I said. We moved before the next patrol sweep turned our alley into a checkpoint. Not toward my apartment block, not yet. Too obvious. Not toward any Vale property either. Saren knew a post-war clinic in the old coastal quarter where records were still kept on paper, and the healer asked questions only after stitching. Holt insisted on coming because, in his words, "I'm already in the story, and I know where 2 more ledgers are hidden." Leo refused to leave my side and refused, louder, to leave Saren's either, which neither of us commented on. As we crossed a rooftop footbridge over the east rail, dawn finally pushed a thin gray line under the cloud cover. The city looked the same from up high. Neon signs, shrine lights, market tarps, patrol routes, steam vents, the whole tired machine. But every few blocks, crowds had gathered around public boards, and every board still glitched. Names kept appearing where advertisements should have been, transfer codes where weather alerts belonged, fragments of Branch 9 bleeding through a broken layer. The world hadn't changed all at once. It had cracked where people could see the seams. Saren walked beside me in silence until we reached the far side of the bridge. Then she said, without looking over, "For the record, I did marry you to use you." I let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "I know." She adjusted the pressure on her wounded shoulder. "I didn't expect to care what happened after." This time I looked at her. There are moments when a season ends and nobody says the line the audience wants. No speeches, no promises. Just two people standing in the wreckage of a decision, alive long enough to regret and defend it at the same time. Below us, a siren tower stuttered and resumed. Behind us, the district shouted itself awake. Ahead, the morning trains began running on backup schedules, carrying people to jobs and systems they now knew were lying. I tightened my grip on the useless shard and kept walking with my enemy wife into a city that had seen its own maintenance room and would never sleep the same way again.